All right. So let's get going this morning. We'll get logged in here and get on to. We're going to be in Exodus, the 25th chapter, starting down around verse number 10. So does everybody remember what happened in the first 9 verses that we were talking about? Offering from the heart. The house of God is not established or built without offering. Okay? So keep that in mind. We talked about it being of free will. We talked about it being genuine from our heart. We talked about it having to be offered up from us. But keep in mind, the house of God does not get built without offering. God can give the command. God can lay out all of the ordinances. He can lay out all of the blueprints of how to do it. But it will not be done without giving the right offering. So you can still build a house too, but it won't be the house of God without the proper offering. As is evidenced in Israel throughout their history. There's many, many times that the tabernacle stood or the temple stood, but it was not the house of God. Because the presence of God did not reside in it because of the people. There was not an offering of their lives and their hearts before God. It was done their own way. It was desecrated in many, many ways over many times. But the idolatry is always the main form of desecration of the tabernacle or temple of God. And the idolatry means that you now have freely offered your life, your will, to something other than God. That's the main form of idolatry that we have. The main form of idolatry that we possess is arrogance, pride, and ego, that we offer up all of the praise and honor and glory that should go to God, all of that service that should go to God, we offer it up to ourselves. Nobody likes that, but it's true. We tend to desire and willingly serve our own selves and our own motives more than we do God. If we get into the page where the things of God are going on around us, but we have our own little thing that we'd rather do than do God's program, that's worshiping self. We're worshiping and satisfying the flesh over God. And that's where we get in trouble. So don't expect that the tabernacle that was not made with hands is being inhabited by the Spirit of God when the owner of that tabernacle is remaining in ownership instead of giving up ownership to God. You sign the papers over to God, you're supposed to sign them over for good. You're not supposed to keep clauses in that contract where you can keep pulling it back whenever you want to. Right? Last night we talked about the salt covenant. Last night we dealt with covenant before God, unbreakable promises to God, and the promises that God makes to us, but ours are supposed to be the same way to Him. So in that process, remember that God designed this in such a way that it was never supposed to be broken. Our promises to God are never supposed to be broken. Okay, so we need to keep that very much at the forefront of what we are, who we are, and what we're doing. Now, I'm going to do a couple things as we begin to read here, but let's go ahead and let's read starting in verse number 10, and let's talk about the Ark of the Testimony or the Ark of the Covenant. Yes?
Before you go into it, do you know of or heard anything where the Ark might be? I've heard stories and I've read a little bit about it.
There are a lot of stories about where the Ark of the Covenant is today. There are some Jewish scholars that will even tell you that they've got all the parts and pieces put together and they're waiting underneath in the Temple Institute. There's a lot of guys that will tell you that this and that. I don't have any idea. I don't believe anybody does. I believe this, that they're doing the best they can to put everything together to get ready to build that ark. To build the temple. Okay, sorry, not the ark, but to build the temple. Okay, and part of that, you cannot have the temple of God without the ark. Cannot have it without the mercy seat of God. Okay, so there's a lot of conjecture out there. There's a lot of conspiracy theory. Okay, now I'm going to say it that way. I know I'll probably get disagreed with by 100 people. Okay, maybe even some sitting here today, that they know exactly where it's at. the rabbis know where it is, or the priests know where it is, somebody knows where it is. Personally, I think it's all conjecture, because here's what I believe about Israel. If Israel had hold of and possession of that ark someplace, they wouldn't be hiding it. They would be putting it right up in front of them and marching forward to battle. I think that's exactly their mentality. But, hey, I'm just a guy. I'll give you a mildly educated opinion about what's going on, okay? I'm going to say mildly educated. But I don't believe that there is possession right now, at least outward possession of any kind, because I believe that whoever is in possession of that ark, and if they truly possess it and they truly believe in the God of Israel, they truly believe in Adonai, they truly believe in him, the great Hashem, that they would bring that to the forefront, especially with what's going on in that land. And they would use the ark as their power, which it is. It is an incredible symbol of God. And if they would reconsecrate and dedicate, they would have a power beyond measure. Okay? Now, I know that some have said, well, until they can reclaim the Temple Mount, until they can reclaim that and tear down the mosque. But hey, when David didn't have that Temple Mount, he made one. He made a place to hold that ark, right? He made that Shiloh. He made that place to keep that ark I just don't believe it right now. I don't believe that they have it. But I would guarantee you that if we were to go on the internet right now, I could pull up 10 to 1,000 different opinions on what's going on with the Ark of the Covenant immediately. So, I don't know, yeah.
The one, the Ron Wyatt story, you ever look at that one?
No.
He's the one that says he actually found it and gave the location to the priest. And he had all kind of different things, evidence that lined up exactly with what Rabbi had said.
There have been, I don't remember that particular one, but I have seen this since I was a little kid. People talking about having found it or having found the location or all that. Now, Dr. Masters was here this morning. Maybe he's seen more evidence than I have. I've never seen evidence that it's been found, though. I've heard a lot of people talk about some really detailed stuff, and they got this, but I've never. How could the most sought after piece of furniture, or whatever you want to call it in history, the most sought after historical article in history, get found and be kept a secret? Maybe it could. A God could veil it. On the ark, okay. So God could keep that, but that wasn't kept a secret, you know. Now, once they found the ark, they found it on Ararat. That was in the 70s or whatever it was when all that happened, and that was immediately. And that's just the ark, Noah's ark. So I just my commonsensical kind of approach to this is, there's no way you keep that thing a secret. Even the what's that? It's supposed to be super secret Catholic group. They make movies about it. The Catholic group that's supposed to exist, but nobody believed that it exists, but it exists, or all this. What's it called? My brain has gone completely blank. I'll think of it in a minute, and I'll shoot it out like Tourette's or something. But that super secret society that the Catholics, you guys know what I'm talking about. They make those movies that Tom Hanks made, the Da Vinci Code movies. All this kind of revolves around that particular group of people. Yeah. So even those guys, I don't think you could hide it. It just seems like it would come out. But maybe there's a lot of other opinion besides that. So we don't know. I don't think anybody knows. So if it's out there, I know it's there. I know it just didn't disappear because it's the mercy seat of God. It's going to be found. It's going to be placed in the temple, and the temple is going to be rebuilt in 3 days. It's going to come up, and it's going to be exactly this place of reuniting and reunifying the world, not just Israel, but the world. But by the time all that happens, we want to go home, right? Because the man of sin is going to be in charge of putting all that back together. He's going to be in charge of all those things. And 3.5 years later, he's going to go in and he's going to desecrate it and show his true form and true self. So I'm not really interested in all those things. So, okay, so let's go into verse number 10. Can't read that far away. And they shall make an ark of acacia wood, 2.5 cubits shall be its length, 1.5 cubits its width, and 1.5 cubits its height. Now, I want to, first of all, establish something. You see a lot of these old movies, they got this huge ark that these guys are carrying, and it's this massive thing and all that. The Ark of the Covenant is not that big. Okay? Now, a cubit is what? It's about 18 inches. It's basically supposed to have been this distance of like from here to here to the elbow, and it's supposed to be about 18 inches-ish. So it's about 1.5 feet. So if you say that the length, 2.5 cubits. So 2 cubits would be about 3 feet. Another 0.5 cubit's about another 9 inches. It's about 3 feet, 9 inches. It's really about 4 feet or less in length. It's not that big, okay? It's not that big. And then if it's going to be 1.5 cubits in width, so that's about another 27 inches-ish in width, so it's less than 3 feet wide. So it's less than 4 feet by 3 feet. It's not that big. Okay? It's not this huge, massive thing. And you're going to see as we talk about the actual scale of the tabernacle of the wilderness, it's not that big of a building that's made. I mean, it's good size, but it's not this enormity that we think of the temple and all those things. It's not this massive building. Keep in mind, the tabernacle is portable. You got to be able to move it around. The Ark of the Covenant had to be able to be carried. And when you start making gold, gold is extremely heavy, right? So you start carrying that stuff around, it could be a real hard thing to even be able to do. And he's only going to have 2 poles so 4 people can carry this thing. So it's got to be able to be moved. Okay? And then 1.5 cubits its height. So once again, you're about 27 inches or a little bit more in height. So it's not very tall, right? It's more like table height. Much more like table height. So it's something that is not enormous. It's probably very close to the size of this table, maybe a little bit wider than this table, but as far as length, height, right? That's the base of it. That's not including the cherubim that'll be on top of it. That's just the base of it. Okay, so as it sits, it's going to be about that size. All right. Verse 11, and you shall overlay it with pure gold. Inside and out you shall overlay it, and you shall make it on a molding of gold all around. You shall cast 4 rings of gold for it, and put them on its 4 corners. 2 rings shall be on one side, and 2 rings on the other side. And you shall make poles of acacia wood, and overlay them with gold. You shall put the poles into the rings on the sides of the ark, that the ark may be carried by them. The poles shall be in the rings of the ark, they shall not be taken from it. Now keep this in mind. Most of the time when you see the Ark of the Covenant, there aren't any poles in it. But God said you're going to put those poles there, and you're going to leave those poles in there so it can be moved. At any moment's notice, the ark could be taken and moved. This was a very mobile setup that God puts together here. Keep that in mind. Because there are times when they will move quickly in the wilderness. There are times when they'll have to move quickly in the wilderness. And God has this plan set up. God's plan, and I just want to point this out, one of the great things about God is God's plan always has us ready for what is to come. Always. So little things like this. And I'm not going to, as we go through this, I'm going to talk a little bit about the detail. I'm not going to get into enormity of detail here with all of these different things and every little symbolic meaning of everything. If I did, we'd spend another 6 months just on the tabernacle. Okay, so I'm not going to do that. We've studied the tabernacle in the past. If we want to study the tabernacle in the future, we'll do that. So we're going to move through this faster than I normally would, even though it will take us some time. Okay, so but just keep that in mind. I'm not going to get too detailed because we could spend on every detail. We can spend time on its symbolism and such. Okay, 16. Okay, no. 16, okay. And you shall put into the ark and you shall put into the ark the testimony which I will give you. Now, testimony is capitalized there. Anybody know what the testimony is? His commandments, his laws, okay? The testimony that God, he says, shall give you, because he has not yet given him what? Well, he hasn't been given that stone yet, right? He's been given verbal from God, right? He has already talked to God. He's been given 613 laws already. We've already gone through all that, right? He's been given all the law, but it hasn't been physically given yet. So here's another one of those faux pas when we talk about the Ten Commandments, the movie, okay? And I refer to this, and I don't know about you guys, but this is just what I relate to. As a kid, I grew up in church, but I tell you, I got more of my, and this may just be me because I'm ignorant, I don't know, but I got more of my understanding or my visualizing of what was happening in between God and Moses and all this time through that movie than I did from anything else, from any of my Sunday school teachings. And the problem is, a lot of my Sunday school teachings matched up with the movie. I hate to say that, but all of us, if we sat down and thought about it, a lot of our Sunday school teachings matches up with that kind of thing because we don't get into the detail of the separation of what really happened. And a lot of it's because at those small, young ages, it's not really important to point out there were different times that things were given and all that. It's not. What's more important to point out is that it was given, okay? But there is this particular thing that I want you to understand. God gave these things verbally to Moses. He talked through all of these things and gave them to Moses before he actually wrote them in stone. Before Moses goes back to Sinai and literally goes up and spends that time with God, and God by his own finger pens them into stone. So there's a difference in this, right? So there's this process that Moses is going through with God where he's hearing from God daily. God's giving him all of this stuff, but he hasn't actually got the stone yet, the tablets, right? So keep that in mind. So he says, you put my testimony in it. Verse 17, you shall make a mercy seat of pure gold. 2.5 cubits shall be its length, and 1.5 cubits its width. Why did it have to be 2.5 cubits in length and 1.5 cubits in width? So it could sit on top of the base, right? So the mercy seat that God is going to make is different than the base of the ark. What's the difference? Well, that's just what it is, but what's the difference? No, go ahead and say what you were saying, Dylan. You're on the right track. It's made of pure gold instead of acacia wood overlaid with gold. There's a difference. Now, I am going to talk about the symbolism of that for just a second, because what God is going to touch, which is the mercy seat, where he is going to sit, where the priest is going to sprinkle the blood upon, where God is going to consume the sacrifice, had to be of its nature pure. Had to be pure, because purity is the only place that the righteousness and holiness of God can be. Now that base which held that up was formed of the natural and the pure gold, and it was formed of all these things because there has to be a foundation that it sits upon. But when God's going to come, whatever God's going to be on is going to be 100% pure. And that's the place where the literal presence of God, the Shekinah glory of God, would literally sit on that mercy seat. When the presence of God was shown in the tabernacle, it came through and came out of the Holy of Holies, and it literally rested on that Ark of the Covenant. That was God's presence, God's sitting place. Okay? I can't imagine seeing it. Because men didn't get to see it actually sitting on the ark. Only the high priest would get to evidence that once a year. But if you were in the camp of Israel, and remember the tabernacle, we haven't gotten here yet, obviously, but the tabernacle was centered right in between all the 12 tribes. You'd have 3 tribes on each side, on each of the 4 sides, surrounding the tabernacle. And this tabernacle was at the center of God's people. And God's presence would be shooting out of this thing. Right? This incredible presence of God, the Shekinah glory of God, which sat upon that seat. was right there, but the seat had to be pure. Had to be pure. Could not be touched by human hand. Could not be desecrated by anything. It had to be kept pure. Okay, so there's a difference between the ark itself and the purity of the seat. Now, Cheryl asked me a question earlier about the ark and the term the ark, and it's a good point. I want to bring this up because she had a good thought on this, was that what's the difference between the Ark of the Covenant or Noah's Ark or something? The ark itself literally just is a term that describes a vessel that holds or contains things. Okay? Moses was put in an ark and placed on the river Nile. Okay? The ark could be many, many things, something that was a vessel of some kind made to hold or contain things. And she brought up a good point that God actually established this term ark more of the place that God would hold precious things. Moses was precious. Noah and his family, precious, right? The things that are going to be placed in the ark of the covenant, precious. The ark portion is what held things. And it's where the mercy seat sat upon. So really, when we talk about the Ark of the Covenant, it is two separate things come together. It is the thing that God establishes to hold what he holds precious, and then it's his covering of his mercy and his spirit and his presence on top of it. Okay? So the design of this is very symbolic of how God cares for us and his people. He said, I'm going to make something that will hold you, put you in. It's going to have both natural and that which would be symbolized as the pureness of God put into it. What might that be? Let's take it one step further. What is the only thing that has ever existed which has been both natural and divine? Jesus. So here's what I'm going to do for you. I'm going to give you a Savior. He'll be made of the natural, the acacia wood. But he will be clothed in purity. He will be God and man together. And now this is what the Word of God says, that in the hands of the Son, God had placed what? His bride, his people, so that they could never again be snatched out. There's no force that can snatch away the bride from the hand of the groom. That's God's gift for the sacrifice that Jesus made, right? So inside of that ark, God placed what was precious to him. Inside of that ark, God sealed and secured what was precious by putting his spirit of purity, by putting the Father right on top. Because, see, the Father is pure. The Father never has been physical man. He's never been this clay, all of these elements put together. God is just God. He's pure. So he comes on top and seals that which is precious to him inside the ark. So here is what I'm designing for you, my people. I'm going to give you something. Now, all of this in it, like I said, I'm getting into some detail, but this is not nearly the detail what we get into if we were going to have a study on the Ark of the Covenant, okay? So here's just a little bit of detail I want to get into. God designs with eternity in the future in mind already, because he's already played out the plan. He's already formulated and put it into work. He's already got the sacrifice coming that will replace all this law. He's setting up all this law, and he already knows how he's going to fix it. All right? Okay, so God says, I have all of this in place, and here's what we're going to do with it. I'm going to show you right now. I'm going to make something that it comes from the earth, but also has this purity of the gold on the outside of it. The gold that was on the outside was absolutely 100% pure. Pure gold, refined gold, right? It overlaid the wood. And then I'm going to take my purity, which is just pure gold formed on top, and I'm going to set it right on top. I'm going to set it right on. We'll get into here where God's also going to guard it in just a minute, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. Okay? But see, I just want you to see the beauty of what God's thinking of and how he does this ahead of time. I want you to see and understand this, because it's really important to not just see this setup of the tabernacle, but to see the plan of God as we have the wonderful opportunity of Monday morning quarterbacking or hindsight, right? We get to look back over everything that was done and see its perfection and its incredible plan and all the beauty that God's put together. We get to see this. They didn't see it. It was all being formed in front of them, right? I was talking to you last week about history, how we're living in things that we don't understand, that in 50 years or 100 years, should God tarry, people are going to be talking about the day that we're living in right now, 2020, will be in every history book in the world. There will be all these times that are talked about. We have got things going on right now in our state that are going to be talked about in history books. We have got this socialistic mandating being put upon us right now in many, many ways. Okay? I had to take my daughter to the hospital for a follow-up after her surgery yesterday to Kaiser Fontana. On the corner of Sierra and Valley, there were about at least 50, maybe more, nurses and their families who were protesting against the mandates that Kaiser's making, which they're calling state, which are not fully state yet. They're trying to be. I saw things coming out yesterday, but this Kaiser and Fontana is one of the first, because we went last 2 weeks ago when my daughter had the surgery. It was 2 weeks ago today. We had been in the ICU unit with her every day. We'd been visiting. We'd been able to stay there with her. We show up early that morning, and they tell us that there was a county mandate. Downstairs, they said it was a county mandate that nobody could go in and visit people in the hospital. I had them call upstairs to the charge nurse. Charge nurse told me it was a state mandate that came down that nobody could visit. So my wife and I, under duress, left. We began to call other hospitals. We began to look up on all of the state and county websites. There's not one mandate that was out by a county or state Department of Health, anybody, that said that you couldn't go in and visit. It was Kaiser, and they blamed it on the state. But Kaiser Riverside still let you in. Right? So what did they do? They made their own mind up of how they were going to do it. Now the state is coming down, and they're trying to do this as well. They're trying to make every health worker has to be vaccinated or they can't work. Right? So you know what I saw in the corner? I saw signs that said, "My body, my choice." Been seeing those signs for 40, 50 years, haven't we? But for abortion. Now, you could say no to any other vaccine in the world, but you can't say no to this vaccine or you can't have a job. And it's an experimental vaccine. It's not proven. Right? This is all just a big deal. So all of this stuff. Now, I don't care. If you want to get the vaccine or you've gotten, I don't care. That's not my point. I don't have anything against anybody who's gotten the vaccine. I could care less. That's not the point. The point is that we're getting a government that is forcing us control. And they're doing it through fear and misinformation. That's the problem. We don't have the backup yet. Every vaccine in the history of mankind has gone, or at least in America, let me rephrase that, always has to go through the FDA approvals of years of proof to see what the side effects might be down the road and things of that nature, right? And we put this one, I understand they wanted to do it quickly because of the pandemic issues and all that stuff. I get it. But the problem is that now we're being forced into things that we've never been forced to in our history. It's a control issue. A control issue. And we don't have the science to be able to prove, number one, that it is totally effective, right? Because now we're seeing evidences of people who are getting the vaccine of getting sick after they've gotten the vaccine. And dying after they've received the vaccine. But once again, when you see those evidences, what is it? They catch the virus, but they typically have other comorbidities in their life. So there's a lot of this information, and hey, the vaccines may turn out to be great. We just don't know yet. That's the problem. And when a society comes in and starts to force you into doing things, there's a problem. We get into a problem where we get into this deal where it's mandatory and you don't get an option or you don't get choice anymore. It becomes very scary, yeah.
It's a pre-thing for the mark of the beast. Getting it.
Well, we've had this conversation, and I knew we were going to get it. I knew somebody's going to bring that up. Here's the conversation. The conversation is this is the precursor of the mark of the beast. Let me show you the more common precursor to the mark of the beast. It's my debit card. This is the first majorly accepted precursor to the mark of the beast right here in your hand. And every one of us use it almost daily. Everything being done in society today is a precursor to get us to the mark of the beast. So stop being afraid of that part of it, okay? This right now, the more pressing issue is that this is a precursor to socialism and communism. That's the more pressing issue. When your government uses fear or mandates to force you to do what they say without choice, right? I mean, look, some of you are old enough to have lived through some of these things. Some of you are old enough to remember a war that was started by a little German man who started this way. The little things that they began to remove from society. They began to remove the little rights of the people from society. And the more that they removed, the more acceptable society was to removing them. Well, it took him longer than 3 months because it was a long process of doing it. But it happened too quickly. I mean, when he finally got down to the last few things, it was very quick, and it happened, and it was done, and all of a sudden we're in the middle of this communistic dictatorship that he was ruling. But it was years of training, and what's that word? Not training, but indoctrination, and there's another word I'm trying to use for it. But it's a desensitizing of our freedoms. We just get desensitized to these things that take away our freedoms, and pretty soon we'll kind of go along with whatever they say. Now, see, I've had particular thoughts that I might go get the vaccine, go get the vaccine, just so I can be around certain people and do certain things and allow myself to be able to get places and do stuff without fighting. But at the same time, I haven't heard of a vaccine that I believe in yet, that I have a reason to believe in, so I haven't done it. That offends some people, makes some people happy. I'm not trying to make a huge political statement about it. I'm just trying to make a choice, my personal choice, right? It may come out as political, but it's not really political. I live in a country that was founded upon the freedom of choice. I don't always like the choices that get made in this country by people. I don't always like what goes on, but it is what our country's founded on, upon choice, right? Upon the freedom. So I go along with it, I deal with it, but it doesn't always agree with me. It doesn't always make me happy. Right? So the bottom line is, I am not trying to speak pro-vaccine or anti-vaccine at all. I'm speaking pro-choice. Right? Sounds awkward to hear me saying pro-choice. Let me say out loud, I am not speaking about abortion. I do not believe in murder of babies at all, but I'm saying we should have the option whether we take something into our bodies or not. Well, isn't that the same thing as the abortion conversation? No, you made the choice of taking something into your body before the baby got there. That's how the baby got there. You made a choice. That choice should have been made before the baby got there. Now you're going to take that out on the baby. It's different. It is a different conversation, okay? So let's understand that. But I really want to make this clear. So I'm not speaking pro or anti-vaccine. I'm speaking pro-choice of not forcing us to do something to our bodies that could be hazardous. We don't know. It might be perfectly safe. It might be okay. But it also might not be very effective. And why would I put myself through the danger of that if it's not really effective? If it's not going to accomplish what it's supposed to accomplish? It's very difficult. There's more and more data coming out. As every month goes, there'll be more data coming out. But until somebody has all that proven, I want to be able to make my own choice, right? I want to be able to make my choice. So, hey, look, we have to go down to the DMV and register. We have to go do all those kind of things that we already have a lot of mandates on us about how we have to live. So everything we do in that regard desensitizes us to what is going to end up happening with a one world government. So be cautious about the mark of the beast comment, Okay? Just be cautious about it, because the mark of the beast will not be some slippery thing that happens to you. They will not insert a chip into you through some vaccine and now you got the mark of the beast. That will not happen. That is not what is going to happen. The mark of the beast will be a choice that is made by the individual. God would not damn you to an eternal hell because somebody snuck something up on you. That's not God's MO. Does that make sense? No, I know, but I'm just saying, I'm saying this to a lot because I've heard this argument from people about the vaccine being the mark of the beast. They're slipping chips into us, and they're doing this. Hey, you know what? Here's your tracker, too, by the way. They're they're going to track us. Well, there's your tracker right there. Throw your phone away. They know where we are all the time. Right? Here's an idea. Don't go any place where you don't want nobody to know you were going. You won't have to worry about your tracker. Right? No, that's not the answer. Leaving your tracker at home is not the answer. Just don't go places that it doesn't matter where you go, right? I mean, the only time I've turned my tracker off is because my daughter just kept calling me and asking me, why are you over there? Why are you over here? Why? And I got sick of that. Right? But it wasn't because I cared about where I was at. I just don't want, I'm 53 years old. I don't want to be answering questions to a 29-year-old all day long about where I am and why I'm there. Right? That's the point. But it had nothing to do with being ashamed of where I was at. But the trackers are there. So they're not going to, look, this is not the way the mark of the beast. The mark of the beast will be a choice, and it will be in one of two places. It won't be some chip inserted in your arm or your buttocks or someplace else. It will be either on your forehead or on the back of your hand. Period. That's what it'll be. It'll be some form of a mark or a branding or a tattooing of some kind. Maybe it'll be an electronic deal. I don't know how it'll be by the time it happens, but it will be placed either on your forehead or the back of your hand. Now, as a pre-tribulation rapturist, I believe that we will be gone and we won't have to worry about that. Okay? Even as a mid-tribulation rapturist, if you're a mid-tribulation rapturist, you would still believe that you'll be gone before you have to take the mark. Okay? But you'll have the choice whether to take the mark or not. It will not be a sneak attack thing put on you that they sneak into you and you go, oh man, how did I get that? It'll be a choice you make. Okay? Everybody clear on that? I want to make sure we just say that out loud. It is not a sneak attack where people can be sent to hell without knowing. Anybody who ends up with eternal damnation will know that they made the choice for it. Period. Illuminati, thank you. That goes way back to the very beginning of the lesson. If you just tuned in, rewind. Illuminati, thank you. That was a group I was trying to think of in the beginning. Hey, I got all those pieces of paper on the wall and I still don't know what I'm talking about. So there we go. So, but just keep in mind, let's don't be ruled by fear. That's what this whole business is. Control by fear. Our government, our governor has been really good at this. The more I can make you afraid, the more I can control you. The more I can scare you, the more I can control you. The more misinformation I can put out, the more I can keep you under my thumb and make you do what I want you to do. This guy right now is fighting to do everything he can to keep going on, and because he knows that his days are probably numbered in office. And if I have anything to say about it, then they will be. That is kind of political, but not really. It's just because of what's going on in our state. And when I fill up my truck and throw a $100 bill into my tank of my truck, I believe that we got problems that need to be solved, and they're deeper than just pandemic problems. They're much deeper seated. When I look at the homeless situation in this state in comparison to other states, we have problems that need to be dealt with. And we need somebody to deal with those, someone who's going to deal with those for us in a way to deal with it. Well, yeah, there's more homeless here than all the rest of the country put together, I believe. If I'm not mistaken, I think there was a study that was done that said that. So anyway, we look at this. There's a lot of bad things going on, but let's go back to this. Don't let fear dictate your decision making. Don't let it dictate your politics. Don't let it dictate your lifestyle, right? Let's stay under faith in God. Stand up and speak out. Stand up and fight the fight that we need to fight as we need to. And that's where we really need to be. And that's not a political statement. That's just a truth statement for life. Be willing to stand up and do that. Okay. Where am I at? 18? All right, so here's the prettiest part of the Ark of the Covenant as far as looks to me. And you shall make 2 cherubim of gold, of hammered work you shall make them at the 2 ends of the mercy seat. Make 1 cherub at one end and the other cherub at the other end. You shall make the cherubim at the 2 ends of it of one piece with the mercy seat. Now, did you hear that last part? The cherubim are going to be made. Now, this is like a 4 by 2.5 to 3 foot, about 2.5 feet wide piece of gold, solid gold. And now we're going to make these 2 cherubim on top of it, and it's to be made as one piece. Not only heavy, it's very difficult, very intricate. You need an incredible artisan to put this together, right? Now, when we get down to who actually gets involved in the design of this, you're going to find out the incredible hand of God and how God works when he uses a little kid to put all this together. But it's really cool. We'll get there in a minute. Calm down. We'll get there. Yeah.
When you said one piece, it's not like you got the 2 angels and then you got the seat and then you kind of glue them together, right? It ain't like that, right? It's like
No,
one piece.
it's one piece. She said, when you got the one piece, it's not like you have this and this and you glue them all together. No, it's one piece means one piece. That's why the craftsmanship is so incredible. The bait? No. Hold on. Okay, so remember, let's do this. Roger, I'll get to your question in a second. Let's remember this. Remember, we got the ark portion. Okay? Remember, he calls these 2 different things. He starts it out as the ark, and then we get to verse number 17? Yeah, 17. You shall make a mercy seat of pure gold. Now we got the mercy seat to put on top of the ark. Okay? So the ark is what? The ark is the vessel that holds the precious things that are going to be put in it, right? They're made of the acacia wood. You King James Version only ones. The shittim wood. Okay? It's made of that first, and then it is overlaid with pure gold. Right? We talked about the symbolism of Jesus, right? In that. So it's overlaid. So you have that particular piece with the rings on the 4 corners. That's one piece. Then you have the mercy seat that we're talking about now, which is going to be set on top of that particular piece. Okay? Oh, wait, I got to go to Roger first. I'll come back up. A cherubim is, and I'm going to describe that in just a minute. I'll get right back to that one. So let me finish this one. Pretty good answer. She said, here's one of the things that when I was a youngster really bothered me. Gold is one of the softest metals in existence. Especially the more purified it gets, the softer it gets. Okay? The things that are in gold, I don't have a gold ring. The things that are in gold that keep it from being soft are the other ores that are in it. Iron and different things that are in the gold make it stronger. So 10 karat gold is stronger than 14 karat gold, which is stronger than 18 karat gold, which is stronger than 24 karat gold. And the carats are all the things that talk about the purity of that particular gold. Okay? That's not the carrot you eat, yes. That's the smartest guy in the room, and that was his answer, right? It's not the carrot you eat. We're talking about carats of measurement. It's actually a measurement of weight, but anyway. The bottom line to this is the more pure it is, the more soft and pliable it becomes. So how in the world would you take these pure gold rings on a pure gold anything and be able to support the weight of all this? It would have to be supernatural. It would have to be supernatural. There's no other way that stuff would hold in place without supernatural power. It wouldn't hold its shape over the course of time because it would bend. When I did get married married the first time, married the only time, but my first wedding ring that I had, okay, my first wedding ring was just a gold band, and as I was working, I would come home and sometimes that gold band would turn into more of like an egg shape or something because I would have done something. It was bent and it was all that stuff. By the way, just a little side note, I lost that ring on a job site when I went into a porta potty to wash up and clean up after being on a job, and I set it down, and I left it, and I came back the next day to try to find it. It was already gone. So I have dealt with the wrath of a woman over losing a wedding ring. But yeah, the more pure the gold is, the softer and more pliable the gold becomes. All right, so that's a really interesting little deal. So let's go back to his question about cherubim. There's a little word wealth note in our Bibles if you have this. So let's just read that particular thing because I wanted to read that anyway to you guys. Okay, so cherubim, or in Hebrew, keruvim, is how you pronounce it in Hebrew. It's a plural of keruv, okay? A heavenly being represented by carved gold figures on the Ark of the Covenant. Keruv may be related to Akkadian verb meaning to bless, praise, or adore. Keruvim are mentioned 90 times in the Old Testament, and especially in Ezekiel more than 30 times. Keruvim were observed from Adam's time to Ezekiel's time. See the description in Ezekiel. Anyway, the idea persists that keruv means the covering angel. A keruv does cover in Exodus 20 and 25 over the ark. It's the two angels that are facing each other and covered and guarded the Lord of glory, and his body lay quietly in death in John the 10th chapter. So these are two angel figures with wings, okay, that were considered guardians, okay. Now, what's the first evidence that we have of cherubim? Adam and Eve at the Garden of Eden. There was a flaming sword given to a cherubim to stand guard at the Garden of Eden so that no man could ever enter again. Okay, so that a guarding, that in and of itself, okay, that one thing in and of itself shows the cherubim not to be these pretty little Cupid guys, okay? A lot of times I've heard over history cherubim being equated with Cupid and his little bow and, prancing around and all this stuff. Baby angels. Cherubim are warrior guardian angels, okay? They are made to protect and guard. And those wings coming across being the covering over not only the mercy seat of God, but the ark, which they covered over and protected even in death and resurrection. Yes?
What exists on earth is a prefiguring of what exists in heaven. So these are cherubim that are covering the very throne of God.
So the comment was that what exists on earth exists in heaven, and these cherubim are symbolic of the covering of the cherubim in heaven over the throne of God. There is a protective covering hand, and God has an army of angels, right? And it's not just over the throne room. The Bible says that he would make his angels to encamp round about us. And these cherubim, these warriors that were the protectors of what God held dear, right? They will encamp round about us, and they will protect us. They will keep us. But the great thing of this is the symbolism of these two wonderful angelic beings covering the ark, covering this up and causing this to be this beautiful sign and symbol of God's power and protection and holiness, because the angels' wings are covering and they're coming together, right? And they're bowed down at the ark. And in a second, I'll show you a picture. Let me finish this off. Did I finish off through verse 22? No. Where'd I stop? 20. I'm on 20. And the cherubim shall stretch out their wings above, covering the mercy seat with their wings, and they shall face one another. The faces of the cherubim shall be toward the mercy seat, which means if they're standing over it and their faces are toward the mercy seat, as I said earlier, they're bowed down to the mercy seat, okay? And the wings are covering. We'll show you the picture in just a minute. Okay? You shall put the mercy seat on top of the ark, And in the ark you shall put the testimony that I will give you. And there I will meet with you, and I will speak with you from above the mercy seat, from between the two cherubim which are on the ark of the testimony, about everything which I will give you, and the commandment to the children of Israel. So let's look at a picture here of this, and I'm going to get rid of this. Actually, let's see if I can bring something up. I probably did. I'll have to turn it back on. Oops. Oh, there it is. Okay, let's see. So we can bring this up and show you this picture. Now, this picture is really cool because this kind of gives you an idea. Can everybody see that? You can see here, here's the ark, beautiful and ornate. And here are the poles, and here are the rings, the way that the rings were embedded into the legs of the ark, right? And then here are the cherubim, both bowed with their wings coming toward the seat. Very ornate, very beautiful, priceless in its cost to put together, all this stuff. All of which, by the way, came from the free will offerings of the people. The mercy seat exists because there are hearts that will give themselves before God. Because if there would not be hearts that would give themselves before God, what would be the purpose of the mercy seat? It would be just a waste of God's time, right? But because God knows that there are those who will come, God sacrificed. God gave so that we could have this. So there's this beautiful and ornate thing. Now, Rabbi Hilbrandt has in his home a replica built, and it's an amazing replica. I don't know if I have a picture of that. I'm able to show you a picture of that. Let me see if I can do that real quickly. I will search this up.
The ark should be all gold, though? All the poles, everything's all gold?
Everything's gold.
Oh, that picture is not, right?
Yes, it is. Yeah. It is overlaid with gold. It's just different. It's just overlaid. There's a big difference in the look of the overlay than there is in the other, but it is overlaid with gold. So the other one on top is solid gold. Okay, so remember, there's a difference. You're going to have a difference in the look of those things that are solid gold and those things that are covered. All right, it'll be a little bit different. So just keep that in mind. But yes, yeah, it's much. How don't I have just a straight picture of that in here? Well, I got a picture of Elmer Master standing behind it with a light there, which is kind of hard to see. But let me see if I can. Let me see if I can throw this up there or not.
Does the overlay of gold make it sacred but not pure?
What it does is it makes it. Well, it's not doing it. It makes it show that it's okay. I won't be able to put your picture up here, so I won't be able to do that. What it makes it show is the combination of natural man and deity, which is symbolic of Christ, right? To show the two together. So there's something that comes out of that which is very different. Come on, go away. Go away. There we go. Okay, so let's see. How can I get this up here? I know I have it in these photos here. Then I can go back to photos, and I can say, let's do this. How am I going to get there? Oh, my goodness. Let's see. Where's my search feature on here? All right, let's put this away. I didn't actually get this particular one up here. I got that one, but I didn't get all of them. So let's see. There it is. There's a search feature. All right, so let's go. So let's see where that is. Okay, so let me see if I can full screen this again and we can get a little bit better. So that's in the back room there. I don't know if you guys can see that very well, but that is a pretty good replica of that build. Now this is all built out of wood. It's overlaid with like a gold paint to make it look gold, but it's made of wood, and that is in Rabbi Hilbrandt's home. A little bit brighter of a look there. It's a darker look from the other side. That's a model of the temple that he has also. Another one. Nope. That's just two old coots there. That's nothing. Let's see. All right. So that gives you a little bit of an idea, though, okay, of the replica that was built and put in there. So it's a really cool deal, and that's in the back room of Rabbi's house where he has a lot of Judaica. He has his 170-year-old Torah scroll and all those things that are in there. So, but there's this beauty that is enhanced by this ark. And one of the great things about the beauty of the ark is the symbolism of the beauty of God's mercy. The protective nature offered by the cherubim of God's mercy, God's holiness. All those things put together that cause us to see who God really is in totality, as opposed to so many people have kind of like a tunnel vision of God. You know, they got one attribute of God and that's all they see. See a God of wrath or they see a God of love, right? They see a God of healing or they see a God of death. They don't see the fullness of God, the full attributes of who God is, the fullness of God, and that the fact that he is more than just love and compassion and all those things. He is a God of judgment. He is a God of disciplines. He is a God of rules. He's also a God of mercy and compassion and healing and justice. Last night we talked about the two things. The Midat Rachachim, which was God's compassion and mercy, or the Midat, now my mind's going to go blank. I think it was just Rachim, which is the God of justice, but more appropriately, the God of strict justice. And those are important things to understand and see, because that is the broadness of who God is. He's all these things in this one incredible being. And the mercy seat of God, or the Ark of the Covenant, is a great testimony of that. It's also called the Ark of Testimony many times. The tabernacle is called the place of testimony. We come into this because it is the seeing of the fullness of who God is. As we get into the other articles of furnishing of the tabernacle, we'll understand this a little bit more. But when we talk about the Ark itself, we see a full God. We see, first of all, the foundations of who God is and who God wants to be is God in the personage of the Son. Both divine and natural brought together. And the only thing that could do that was the sacrifice of the Son. The only thing that could truly bring us together for an eternity was the sacrifice of the Son, because all of this that is being set up right now was all to be temporary. The sacrificial system was always to be temporary so that there could be one eternal sacrifice. So now, if you're me, here's the question I have about that. Why not just do it all up front? Why not just let the Son come and sacrifice for him now? Maybe the statement was it wouldn't be appreciated the same way because of what had happened, and maybe that's the case. I'm kind of thinking, though, salvation would have been pretty accepted at the time of the flood. Don't you think? But if let's take hundreds of years after the flood, if God came and said, okay, I'm going to bring salvation right now. You remember the flood? You want to be saved from that kind of thing? Here's my son. He'll save you forever. Now, it makes logical sense in my head. Okay? There's my first problem. I know that sounds funny, but it's true. And the way some of y'all brains work, it's like comedy hour at the Improv inside some of those places. I can tell you that right now. See, so here's the problem with this. See, we're some 1,500 years BC here, right? In that give or take, a few decades here. But we're right in that neighborhood. And there's going to be over a millennia and a half go by before Jesus is going to come. There's a couple of things that come to my mind. Number one, God is just really establishing his people on earth. He has not given his people the inheritance of their land. He has not established them amongst the peoples of the nations yet, of the peoples of the world, the nations of the world yet. He has not put them through the test of the fire yet. See, there's this process that God has played out and planned out that doesn't make any sense to me. Because I'm thinking, if you're going to fix it, you got the solution, why give this first to get the solution? But having a little bit of contracting experience under my belt, I've learned plans are laid out, plans are put together, and then there has to be an execution of the plan to fully see the end product and fully appreciate the end product. See, I got a blueprint laid out. God says, this is the way we'll design it, we'll put it together, and I'm going to design it, and you're going to see, here's the point, okay? Let me get to this point. Stay with me really close here, okay? Because this is the part that I wrestle with in my daily life. God has a plan. And I'm going to see through the experience of God's plan the value of the end product. Now, you were on track earlier with appreciating it. Excuse me. Through what Israel goes through, and they see the difficulty of the sacrifice. They see the difficulty of maintaining it. They see the difficulty of maintaining the tabernacle. They see the difficulty of maintaining the temple. They see the difficulty of maintaining their freedom. They see the difficulties in battling against idolatry. They see the difficulties in all this. They see the struggle. They see the war that rages. And then God says, I have an eternal fix to all of that in my Son. How much more should I appreciate that after seeing the history? And once again, we have the benefit of hindsight. So I see the history that goes by. How much more should I appreciate what God has done by seeing what it took to get there? What the experience has been. That the mercy seat was already established, but the mercy seat was fulfilled and completed in Jesus. See, the process is usually the most important part of what God's doing in your life. The journey is the most important part because the journey teaches you how to get to the end. Because most of us don't know how to get to the end. Even when we say, Jesus, come into my life, we don't know how to get to the end because we haven't experienced the things we need to experience that will grow us properly to appreciate getting to the end. It's like the little rich kid who gets handed everything in their life and they don't ever appreciate anything. I remember some friends of a friend back when the big internet boom and all of the tech boom and all that happened. They had started some particular company and they started this thing in their garage and they ended up selling it and going public with it and selling it off pretty much. And they became instant like $200 million people. They had over $200 million to their name. overnight, basically, after their IPO of their stock. It was just instantly, they were just multimillionaires. They had 2 children. Now, growing up and struggling for things and wanting things and all that stuff, it would be easy just to go spoil those kids and just give them everything in the world because you had the money to give them anything. They made a rule in their house. Their children were allowed 9 toys. They could have 9 toys. If they wanted a new toy, they could have the new toy, but they had to get rid of another toy. And they had to take that toy, they had to clean it up, fix it up, and give it to somebody. That's crazy parenting right there. That's crazy good parenting. Right? Those kids had to appreciate everything they got. They had to have an appreciation for it, and they had to have appreciation for those who were less fortunate than them. They developed a way to cause them to see stuff, cause them to be better people down the road than they were when they were kids, to grow them into something. God has a plan for your life, and God is a great parent. He knows how to grow his children. He knows what you and I need. We don't know. We think we know. But that's where our ignorance comes into play. We think we know. He does know. There's no question about what he knows. He knows. And what he does is always to grow us and for our betterment. Every move he makes is because he has our best interest at heart. There's not a thing that's ever been done that wasn't done to be able to spend an eternity with us. We don't know squat. We're just these ignorant little infants, you know? Infants don't know nothing. All they know is find where I can eat. They don't know how to do that. They just, whatever comes, they'll put anything in their mouth. Right? Little baby will put anything in their mouth. And they'll just start, what do? They start sucking on it. They're looking for food. That's all they know. Well, they know one other thing. They want to be held by love. They want to be fed and held by love. They seek for that. My little nephew is attached to my wife in a way that I've never seen a child attached to a person that wasn't their mother. Just have never seen it. And it all goes back to when he was an infant, through a difficult time, she loved him. She cared for him, held him through difficult times. And I believe this all in my heart, that he, in his subconscious, remembers that and feels that. And that woman can do no wrong in the sight of that little boy. But there's something different in the way he looks at her. The way he, oh my Lord, we have a picture in our house of me and Cindy in Seattle, and we're kissing. In this picture, we took this little photo underneath this huge Ferris wheel thing, and we were kissing. The first thing that little twerp does when he comes to my house, he walks over to the counter where that picture is, and he flips it down, face down. And he says, "No, that's my Cindy." See, all children know how to do is to look for love and food. And when they find it, they want to hold on to it. And when they find the deepest love, they'll keep going back to. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. It's the way God is. And when we find the love of God, what do we do for the rest of our lives? We may run, but we are always looking for the love of God. Wherever we find God, we go out and we try other stuff. We go back to the vomit that killed us in the first place. We go back to looking for love in the wrong places. We go back to all these things, and all the time we're still looking for one thing. It's the love of God. Because nothing else has ever filled the void the way the love of God did. Now, some of you know this firsthand, because some of you got saved, ran from God, came back to God. You know the feeling. Some of you got saved and just stayed. Said, I don't want to go back. I remember what it was like over there. Wherever you might be, the bottom line is that nothing fills your life like the love of God. There's nothing. So the reminders that we have about who he is and the fullness of him are extremely important, that we don't tunnel vision God. We don't see one attribute of God. We see a fullness of who God is. The Ark of the Covenant is the fullness and the embodiment of who God is. It's God in his God-man form. It's God in his sacrificial form. It's God in his holding the things that he loves form. It's God in his purity form. It's God in his seat of judgment form. It's God in his seat of mercy form. It's God in his seat of honor where he is loved and protected by even the angels who surround him. It's God in every attribute and aspect that he is, embodied in one piece of furniture. And it's even God in his holiness so that the things that will bear up the seed of God can't touch it. You can't look upon it and live. You have to come under the presence, the glory that surrounds him because of his holiness. And in the state we're in, don't go touch it. Don't go touch it. You got to remain where he tells you to remain. Unless, of course, you're David and you get a moment, you know. But that's a little different. So God is who God is. All right, we'll stop there. We'll stop at the ark and we'll pick up on the table of showbread next week. Any questions or thoughts? Pick up on verse 23 next week. No questions? Yes.
Why people don't get a kick out of reading the Bible. Studying the Bible for me is one of the most fantastic things there is. You find out that every day there's something different.
It is absolutely true. Roger, I'm pulling the little guide here. I leaned on it and it pulled out. You'll have to. I'm sorry. I'm starting to break everything. Roger keeps fixing it. I keep breaking it. Yes, you're right. Why people don't enjoy or love reading the Word of God and studying it is beyond me. And now, it's not necessarily beyond me because you know what? I didn't enjoy it when I was younger either. Why? Because I was focused on me. I didn't care about things that were important. There's some place in me, you know what happened? Somewhere something clicked to where I decided I wanted to be more focused on what was important than to be focused on me. Which is really hard because I'm a really, really interesting thing to focus on. See, here's the thing. Y'all laughing, and every one of your little selfish moments is exactly the same thing. Yeah. You're laughing because you can relate to it. Yeah? Yeah. You can resemble that remark, all right?
Let me ask you a question. When he built the ark, now, where did he get all the two of them down? They're still on the run from the wilderness. I mean, they ain't found the promised land yet.
No, they haven't entered the promised land. Yeah, they're not running. Hold on. Let me stop you. They're not on the run. Okay? They're wandering. They're following the plan of God. So they're not on the run. He's leading them to different places. Soon afterwards, he will lead them to the place where they can go over to the promised land. But because of doubt, they will have to continue to wander until that generation dies off. Okay? So they're not on the run. They're just following the places that God's leading them as God's giving them stuff. Okay? There's no reason to run. The army of Pharaoh was destroyed behind them in the Red Sea. They saw the great victory of God. There's no reason to run. Okay, number two, the question was, where did they get all the tools and stuff to build all this and make this? Okay, two things. Number one, remember when they left Egypt, they left wealthy. Not rich, wealthy. There's a big difference between wealth and rich. What? Wealth is something that will sustain you. Rich is mean I got a bunch of money today. Okay, that's rich. They brought everything that they could take and carry with them. All right. Number two, they had artisans that were part of their nation. They had men who were great at doing things. Keep in mind Aaron, when they need to build a golden calf, who do they go to? They go to Aaron because he's great with this metals and all that kind of stuff, and wood and all that stuff. So, by the way, Aaron is the high priest who's going to be working with this stuff, right? And he's the guy who can put all this stuff together. So God has a plan. God's already enacted that plan. And so we see this working in such a way. So they had everything they needed. And what they didn't have, they could make. They had people who could make things. I mean, they had to form this Ark of the Covenant is to be one piece of gold, so they had to form molds, right? And pour molten gold into a mold to make the mercy seat. They had artisans who could craft these things. It's beyond me, because I am absolutely not creative. It's not even a joke. I am so not creative. Now, you can put a blueprint in front of me and I can build it, type of thing, but I'm not the guy that draws the blueprints. Now, I am the guy that you can show me something, I go, yeah, I love that, I don't love that, hey, let's tweak this, and I can help once you get something in front of me, but I can't go start from scratch. It's just not my mentality to make something. So I envy people who can do that. It's a really great talent, but it's not mine. But when God speaks this, God just says it, they hear it and go put it together. Extreme talent. And very spirit-driven on how it comes out, right? So God, remember, this is a very special time. God is dictating to them how to do it and empowering them to be able to do it. And like I said, when we come to find out who he actually puts in charge of building here, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool how God does things. How God takes things that you would never expect could be done, and he makes stuff happen out of nothing. So, all right, any other questions? All right, let's be dismissed in prayer. God bless you. Thank you for being here this morning, and we will see you, men, Saturday morning at 8:30 is Bible study, and then we're back here on Sunday. Heavenly Father, we thank you for your love and your grace and mercy, and we thank you for your word. We thank you for your mercy. We thank you for establishing it and giving it to us, God. We just pray today that we work to make ourselves not worthy outside of ourselves, but worthy through the blood, that we might be able to honor what you have done for us and honor that love that you have given us. And God, we just pray that we continue to grow in you. Keep us safe, keep us in your care.